Hi everyone, welcome to the TristArtist channel. Today I'm sharing a little bit of a different video with you guys. My name is Trista and I have an anxiety disorder. If you have seen my last video, it was called The Healing Journey, then you kind of know what I am talking about. And I really wanted to make this video, but I've been postponing it for so long because I'm quite scared to share this with the world. But I can start my healing journey without sharing my story. So here we go. It all started back in 2015. I am 28 right now, and I think I was 22 or 23 at the time. I got my very first full-time job at a photo company as an illustrator and graphic designer. I had to move for this job and I got a very small studio apartment, loved it all, but after a few weeks I got sick. I felt very bloated, nausea from time to time, but worst of all, I had diarrhea. I would be really anxious to leave the house because I would use the bathroom multiple times before I dared to leave for work. It was quite OCD, and I still have that from time to time, that I don't want to leave the house before I think like, okay, I'm fine, I don't need the bathroom anymore. Because the thing is, you guys, I'm going to be really honest and TMI in this video. I didn't want to poop at work. It is one thing to just take a dump once in a while at work, you know, but when you have diarrhea, you have to go more often or you stay on the toilet for longer. I was so scared that I would have diarrhea at work, that people would notice that I was on the toilet for longer periods of time, or that I had to go and then I would come back to my computer and then I would have to go again and again. So that gave me a lot of anxiety. Of course, I went to the doctor because I didn't want to walk around with this problem. And she said that it was probably a food allergy reaction, so that I was allergic to something in my diet. I got some blood work done and everything seemed fine, but the symptoms didn't really stop, so I started to go onto a diet where you eliminate certain types of food, and I started off with gluten. It wasn't that bad every day, so I kind of lived with it, had these moments of like, oh, I don't like this, but you know, I was coping. So I thought I did start having an eating disorder. I started checking food a lot, like the ingredients. I would be really obsessive about what I would put in my mouth because I was so scared what would come out of the other end, if that makes sense. Also, I didn't eat as much as I wanted, as I needed, so I started getting hungry more often, and then I would get so hungry that I would eat a lot, but also be really anxious about what would happen afterwards, and especially in social situations. This phobia I was slowly developing got worse after a traumatic experience. I was with a group of friends at a friend's place and we went bowling beforehand. We had such a good time, but at that moment I didn't know what was going on. So when we made dinner, I didn't eat the wrap. We were eating Mexican food, but I ate a piece of lettuce with creme fraiche, so some kind of cream, and stuffing. After I ate that wrap, I felt like all the food went straight through me, like someone was pouring a glass of water through me, and everything bloop, just went down. I had to use the bathroom immediately. So I asked my friend if I could use the bathroom. I said that I wasn't feeling well and I wanted to use a shower to relax and stuff. So I went upstairs. The friend said that it was fine, of course. And I went upstairs and I had the worst diarrhea session because the food was also spicy. You can probably imagine how it went down. Yeah, I was really ashamed and really scared. I took a shower afterwards to kind of relax myself, and then my friend drove us home. One thing that was positive about this whole experience was that I knew that it wasn't gluten but probably dairy causing my symptoms. And it got confirmed at the doctors. So I stopped eating dairy and most of my symptoms kind of went away, but my anxiety and my eating disorder certainly didn't. I was really scared of eating something I couldn't or shouldn't accidentally. So eating at a friend's place, I got really obsessive about cooking my own food, or be like, are you sure that there's no dairy in there? Because I even didn't know that there was so much dairy in several products like chips or like soups, stuff like that. Because of this phobia, I started avoiding social situations, social events, or I would be really anxious about it and really nervous. After telling this story, some of you might think, well, Trista, this is not the end of the world, you know. Having experiences like this, it's just life and it's okay. Well, for me, it is a little bit different because I am a perfectionist and I really like to control things because I always had to when I was a little girl, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult. Controlling things was my way of coping with things that happened in my youth, that happened when I was really young and vulnerable, and I always felt like I had to control everything because otherwise everything would go to shit. No pun intended. But what was happening with me during that traumatic situation is that I couldn't control my body. I couldn't control what was happening to my body. And that is extremely scary for me. These traumatic experiences happened more often through the years, which worsened my phobia. I went to Valencia visiting a friend there, and I got really sick the day before I had to fly home. In 2018, I went on a holiday with my husband. I went to France. It was beautiful, but it was a very sad ending for me. On the airport, I really got sick. I was sitting on the toilet while we had to board, and I had my very first, I think, or one of my very first panic attacks at that moment because I didn't want to poop on the plane. I didn't want to be that person where you are sitting there feeling sick and someone's knocking at the door because they have to use the bathroom. Luckily that didn't happen, but I was really, really anxious. And it is so tiring to think about these things and think about the what ifs that could happen, or being scared of even being at a place where you can't use the bathroom. I started avoiding going to the movies, going on a holiday, using public transportation like the train. Even if there is a toilet on the train, I don't want to use it because I'm ashamed. I started having panic attacks more often, and I also lost a lot of self-worth because you feel like you are worthless when you can't truly live or can't be there for friends or family or do anything. My lowest point was in 2018, 2019, I guess. I moved to Middelburg when I got married, and that was a really, really hard time. I moved across country. left behind my friends and family, and we had to live there because Kelvin was studying there at a university where you had to live on campus, not really campus, but kind of a student housing. It was a very small studio apartment. I even have a video about it. I made a tour, so if you want to watch it, I will link it down below in the description bar and also up here somewhere. So the thing was that the university wasn't used to very young married couples. I wasn't officially allowed to live there with Kelvin, but we were married, so how would that work? I was granted to live there, but we didn't get an extra digital key to get into the building where we lived. So we had to share one digital key. Can you imagine being 25 and not having your own house key? I felt very locked in, literally. Imagine not having your own house key, not being able to leave your house whenever you want to and come back whenever you want to. Imagine leaving your friends and family behind, not having a job where you can talk with colleagues, not having a driver's license or a car to visit your family, and it would take 4 hours by train or at least 2 hours to visit a friend. It was very lonely and very upsetting, you guys. During these times, I often got very frustrated with Kelvin as well. We would get into big fights, mostly from my end, because I was really angry and frustrated with him that he wouldn't do certain things in the house, or that he would leave his homework to the very, very, very last minute. And that little girl in me came back to the surface because I felt like control was needed, but control was slipping away. My life was slipping away. And after these angry outbursts, I would get really, really bad meltdowns because I was feeling so guilty of being angry and being frustrated, and oh my gosh, those were really, really dark times. I would cry myself to sleep in bed, or I would move to the couch because I didn't want to sleep in the bed with Kelvin because I felt so lonely and misunderstood. Kelvin is a very stable person. He didn't have really traumatic events in his life, and I had many, so it was difficult to kind of feel understood and feel like you have common ground. I am really grateful for Kelvin though. He stood by me even though I said mean things because I was reacting to frustration and feeling sad and feeling misunderstood and feeling lonely. But he showed me that he will love me always. That he loves me despite of my weaknesses. Despite of not being perfect. And I'm really grateful for that. And at times I would even want to hurt myself because I felt so worthless. And I felt so angry at myself for being weak, for not having a life or being a bad friend because I couldn't do XYZ because I was scared. Luckily, in 2019, we got the keys of our house that we are living in right now. I know that God gave us this house because we really needed it. I really, really needed it. I live really close to my family, and we were able to adopt a dog named Izzy, and yeah, things were looking up. Now, 1 year later, I am still not in that place where I want to be, like I shared in my last video. I don't have an eating disorder anymore, but my anxiety disorder is definitely still there, and with the virus happening, I wasn't really allowed to do social things that I already found very scary, and my world got smaller and smaller again. So it is quite difficult to get out of that rut and face your fears, because it is hard to change old habits, to change convictions that don't serve you anymore. I am not that little girl anymore that has to control everything in her life, because everything will go to this fear, this phobia turned into a whole other kind of fear. The fear of the fear, if that makes sense. So if I have an appointment, I can't really relax until that appointment is over, because I am scared that something will happen, that I will get an anxiety attack. And even fun things like meeting your nephew for the very first time was hard for me, and everything is made so serious in my head that I make everything so difficult for myself. There's so much pressure for me to be perfect. So that is why I started this video series, The Healing Journey, because I want to change that. I want to live again. I don't want to look back at my life and think, was that it? I was stuck in the house because of all the what ifs. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be a mom like this. How can I be a mom? Take care of someone else? With all of this fear inside of me, with all of this pain and sadness, and I don't want to give that message to my children, and I want to do things that scare me despite of my fears. And I think sharing my story will be healing for me, but might also be healing for you. In 2017, 280 million people had an anxiety disorder, which makes it the most or the biggest mental health disorder around the globe. We are now 3 years after 2017, and I think even more people have an anxiety disorder. And although it is very common, it is not talked about a lot, because there's a lot of shame and guilt behind it. And even for me, I've had this idea of starting the healing journey for months, I guess. But I was so scared to start this, to share my story, because of judgment, because of shame. But I have to share my story. I have to start this healing journey. So if you want to share anything about this subject, your own experience about this, in the comments down below, please do so. You can send me DMs on Instagram or send me an email or whatever. I want to hear your story, because with sharing we can heal, and I really hope that I have enough strength, enough courage, enough willpower to change my life. And I hope that you would subscribe to this channel so you can support that healing, you can follow my journey, and maybe even heal yourself. Thank you so much for watching this video and listening to my story. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!